Welcome to Wisdom Synergy, where knowledge meets collective power.
All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to take a journey from the beautiful, soaring sanctuaries on the surface straight down into the hidden depths below. Think about it. We walk past grand cathedrals and historic monuments all the time, completely marveling at their architecture. But how often do you actually stop and consider what lies directly beneath the floorboards? Today, we're exploring the subterranean architecture of sacred spaces, and we're really going to focus on how ancient catacombs and historic churches are just fundamentally, intrinsically linked. Stop. Here lies the Empire of Death. That chilling inscription sits right above the entrance to the Paris catacombs, and honestly, it perfectly sets the mood for our descent into a world where architecture directly collides with mortality. It was carved into the stone by Inspector Heracart de Thury back in the early 19th century. And this warning, which totally echoes Dante's Inferno, wasn't just there to spook people. It was specifically designed to provoke a really profound reflection on our own mortality the literal second we step out of the light and into the dark. Part 1. The world beneath our feet. To really understand these spaces, we first have to wrap our heads around exactly what exists right under the modern cities we navigate every single day. The scale of these underground realms is completely invisible to the average pedestrian, but they form the literal foundations of major urban centers. The numbers are absolutely staggering. There are 6 million human remains stacked beneath Paris alone. In Rome, you've got over 150 kilometers of tunnels running beneath the streets. We're not talking about a few small basement crypts here. These are sprawling, multi-layered underground cities. In Rome, they carved them right into soft volcanic tufa rock, while in Paris, they repurposed these vast ancient limestone quarries. It's an entire, massive, hidden infrastructure. Moving on to part 2, churches built over catacombs. So, the connection between the grand church up above and the crypt down below, that was no accident. It was a deeply intentional architectural strategy used all over the world. It brilliantly illustrates this incredible tension between the quiet, holy world above and the sprawling, macabre labyrinth right beneath your feet. On the surface, you've got light, you've got soaring arches, the living breath of a modern city. But beneath, you have darkness, silence, and the immense heavy weight of history locked into ancient quarries and millions of stacked bones. Building over ancient underground spaces was a highly calculated move to claim sacred ground and basically overlay new beliefs right on top of old foundations. Take a look at the Basilica of San Clemente in Rome. It's a 12th century church sitting on top of a 4th century church, which itself is built right over a 1st century pagan Mithraic temple. Or the Church of San Pablo in Mexico, constructed directly over a Zapotec labyrinth that was literally believed to be an entrance to the underworld. Even over in Ethiopia, the stunning churches of Lalibela were carved straight down into the earth, entirely connected by tunnel networks. This intentional layering proves that what's beneath our feet is this continuous evolving system of cultural memory. Part 3, more than a graveyard. Now, while we definitely think of these places primarily as resting places today, these tunnel systems were utilized way beyond just being simple burial sites. Their origins are actually tied to some very real, practical engineering needs of growing empires. Initially, these catacombs were ingenious architectural solutions to massive public health crises. In ancient Rome, the laws strictly forbid burying the dead inside city limits. So what did they do? They dug outside the walls into the tufa rock. Fast forward to Paris in the 1770s, and the city was quite literally collapsing. Giant sinkholes were swallowing whole houses because of uncharted, abandoned limestone mines. Their brilliant, if slightly dark, solution was to reinforce those collapsing tunnels and use them to empty the city's dangerously overflowing, disease-ridden cemeteries. They solved 2 huge urban crises with one subterranean mega-project. But here's the thing, they didn't just dump the bones into the dark and leave. In the early 19th century, authorities like Paris's Inspector Heracart de Thury completely reorganized those dumped bones into highly aesthetic geometric patterns. He basically turned a city crisis into a macabre museum. He pioneered what we now call the museographical approach. He arranged skulls, femurs, and tibias into literal walls, hearts, and crosses. He took a pragmatic public health solution and completely transformed it into a deliberate architectural monument meant to be visited and reflected upon. And this intentional geometric arrangement of remains, not unique to Paris at all. Cathedrals worldwide feature these vast, artfully arranged ossuaries built directly into their structural foundations. Take the Sedlik ossuary in Czechia. It holds around 40,000 skeletons, arranged into bizarre artistic shapes, including a massive chandelier made of bone. St. James Church in Brno holds 50,000. These aren't hidden, shameful secrets. They are deeply integrated components of the churches themselves, specifically designed to act as physical reminders of mortality right below the feet of the congregation. Which brings us to part 4, sanctuaries, hideouts, and cinemas. If you think these tunnels were only ever used for the dead, the historical record is about to throw you a major curveball. The timeline of the Paris catacombs reveals a totally wild evolution of architecture adapting to the times, completely transforming in utility over centuries. They started as raw material quarries that built the monuments up above, then transitioned into holding the dead, then they hosted actual military conflicts, and finally, they became these massive playgrounds for secret subcultures. Far from being dead, empty space, these tunnels have actively served as sanctuaries for ancient rituals, hideouts during global wars, and yes, even clandestine cinemas for urban explorers. Back in ancient Rome, families actually used the larger catacomb rooms to hold funerary meals to honor their dead, which totally busts the myth that early Christians just hid down there from persecution. And during World War II, the vast tunnels under Paris were famously used by the French resistance to move around unseen. But incredibly, the occupying German forces also built a bunker in that very same network. You had tyrants and the people resisting them, separated by just a few walls of stone and bone. Okay, this is one of my absolute favorite anecdotes. In 2004, police were sweeping the Paris tunnels and discovered a fully functional, completely secret theater. It was built by urban explorers, complete with electricity, a bar, and a projection screen buried deep underground. These explorers, known as cataphiles, mapped out the off-limit sections of the 280-kilometer network, and an artistic group managed to build an entire cinema right under the city's nose. When police returned a few days later, all the equipment was gone, completely vanished, replaced by a note simply saying, "Do not try to find us." It just goes to show how these subterranean spaces continue to spark human imagination to this day. Part 5, Acoustics and Ancient Machines. Now we're going to shift gears a bit into some highly speculative but honestly mind-blowing theories regarding the unseen functions of these architectural spaces. We're moving from physical history into the realm of sound and energy. To look at this objectively, we turn to archaeoacoustics, which is the very real, documented science of measuring how ancient spaces manipulated sound. Researchers have found that historical builders intentionally designed spaces, from ancient megaliths all the way to medieval churches, with highly specific shapes and reflective surfaces, just to enhance sound propagation and elevate the spiritual experience. Take subterranean ritual sites like the Hypogeum of Malta, for example. Researchers documented a very strong resonant frequency there of exactly 110 hertz. Now, why does that matter? Because that specific tone has been proven to alter cognitive processing and induce altered states of consciousness in the human brain. When voices chant in these underground ancient labyrinths, the architecture itself acts as a massive amplifier. The resonance literally changes brainwave patterns. It suggests that these spaces were engineered not just as tombs, but as highly active environments meant to facilitate deep psychological or spiritual shifts. So tie that into what's known as the piezoelectric effect. This is the very real ability of certain materials, including human bone, to generate an electrical charge when subjected to mechanical stress or intense vibration. This leads to the wildly intriguing hypothesis that massive church organs were designed to vibrate those geometric bone arrangements in the catacombs below, effectively turning the church into a giant acoustic and electromagnetic machine. Now, we have to be clear. The idea that churches were literal machines utilizing base 12 harmonic math to open portals is entirely outside mainstream archaeology. However, metaphorically, the idea that these brilliant architects paired soaring organ music with the acoustic properties of millions of stacked bones to deeply move a congregation, that is a powerful testament to how these structures were designed to completely transform the human experience. Finally, Part 6, the Empire of Death. Let's tie all of these architectural mysteries together. Why go through the absolutely incredible effort to build, maintain, and decorate these shadow cities? Well, these spaces were intentionally designed as active living monuments, meant to serve as a powerful memento mori, a visceral reminder connecting the past directly with the present. The arrangement of the skulls, the labyrinthine tunnels, the dim lighting, none of it was an accident or some sinister conspiracy. It was a deeply ingrained cultural tradition. By physically integrating the dead into the very foundations of their sacred spaces, our ancestors forced themselves to confront their own mortality every single day. You see this haunting epitaph over and over in ossuaries around the globe, and it proves these labyrinths weren't just forgotten history. They were an ongoing, operating system of cultural memory. It simply reads, "What we are now, you shall be." When you stand in a crypt in Rome or Paris or Czechia and you read those words, you are actively participating in a conversation across centuries. The system still operating today isn't a secret cabal, it's just the universal human need to process death, memory, and our tiny place in the massive timeline of history. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on next time you stand inside a grand historical building. We've seen how churches overlay ancient temples, how massive stone quarries became mass graves, and how those very same graves evolved into military bunkers, clandestine cinemas, and incredible acoustic wonders. The ground beneath our feet is this massive, multi-layered architectural record of human existence. So look down every once in a while and ask yourself, what exact layers are we adding to the subterranean world today?